Many, many definitions of grief out there. I'm going to share with you my definition of grief. And if you choose to believe this, if you choose to adhere to this, I will give you a very clear map to healing. I will give you a very clear map so that no one will say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. This is how I define healing. It's the internal, automatic response to the loss of a dream. It's internal, it's automatic. When we were little, and I'll make it personal. When I was little, and my mom had 3 suckers for Mary, Tommy, and Jimmy, and I wanted the red one, but she gave that to Mary. That was the loss of a dream. I wanted the red sucker. I'm experiencing grief. When you were in high school and you didn't make the football team, or you did become a cheerleader, but you hated it. You didn't get into the college you wanted. You didn't get the job offer you wanted. You got married and you didn't get the spouse you wanted. It is the end of a dream. And the internal automatic response to that is what grief is. Does that make sense? Every single human being grieves. Every single day. Before I came here, I had coffee with a friend at Starbucks. I don't have to tell you this if you live in Naperville. Do you know how long it took me to find a parking space? There was a lot of grieving going on. I wanted a parking space up close. And I couldn't find it. Something was going on inside of me. Are you with me on that? Yes. Okay. That is grief. Everyone grieves. Be wary, be leery of people who say, I don't grieve. Oh, yes, you do. Grief expresses itself in many, many confusing and surprising ways. The reason those ways are confusing and surprising is because we never, ever, 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 ever talk about it. The fact that there are this many people on a beautiful Sunday afternoon who said, yeah, I'll spend 2 hours talking about grief. That's unusual. Would you agree? We never, ever talk about grief. These are some of the ways grief expresses itself. Sadness, anger, disbelief. It feels like a dream. When am I going to wake up? I'm confused. I have a loss of memory. I can't remember anything. I'm irritable. I am longing. I am crying and crying and crying. Or the opposite. I'm not crying. I haven't cried for 3 months. How many people in this room have experienced at least 5 of those expressions of grief? Raise your hand. Look around, you guys. Look around. There are many, many, many hands up. I wish this was the exhaustive list of the way grief expresses itself. It is not. Grief can express itself through sleeping all the time, or not sleeping at all, or spending 3 months when you sleep all the time, followed by 3 months of no sleeping, followed by 6 months of sleeping all the time. You know what I'm talking about. The same with food. For as many people who their grief has been the most effective weight loss program because they have no appetite and they've lost 20 pounds or 30 pounds. There are as many people, me being one of them. 5 Oreos were not enough. The entire sleeve was not enough. 2 or maybe all 3 sleeves of Oreos were enough in one sitting. There was a deep hole inside of me that I tried to fill with anything made of sugar. Grief expresses itself through panic, through fear, through guilt, through regret. How many people have experienced at least 5 of those? Raise your hand. Look around. Look around. You are not the only one. This surprises a lot of people. Grief expresses itself physically through physical symptoms. I'm numb. I feel dizzy, queasy. I'm going to faint. I have stomach pains. I'm nauseous. I can't breathe. I'm having a heart attack. Are there any ER nurses in this auditorium? Yes. I'm going to respect HIPAA, so we're not going to name names. Have you ever encountered someone who came to the ER 100% certain that they were having a heart attack, and you did all the tests, and physically nothing was wrong with them? Yes. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. It's grief. What many people, if not most people, end up wondering is, am I going crazy? They pull me over. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm going through. I'm going crazy, aren't I? How many people have experienced 5 of these? Yes, yes, yes. So this is what we hear over and over and over again. And we read it a lot on Facebook from really angry people. Grief is so individual. Everybody grieves differently. Grief is so different. No one can tell me how to grieve. I'm going to do it my way. Have you ever heard that? Okay. I just shared with you 3 slides, which had, let's say, 28 expressions of grief. 85% of you raised your hand and said, that's me, that's me, that's me. What happens inside of us? Grief as human beings. It is primarily the same for me as it is for you, as it is for you, as it is for you. I firmly believe that really well-meaning therapists and ministers and social workers who didn't really have a clue said it's very individual. You have to find your own way. Find your own way. When we realize that we have much more in common in our grief than we've been led to believe, let that be comforting. Grief is part of the human experience. Stick with me on this. Your grief, it's not that different from anybody else's. Period. The circumstances which resulted in the end of a dream, the relationship that you had with your loved one, who that loved one was when they were physically alive, that's different, that's sacred, that's special. but the internal response that we all have, it's part of being human. Do you understand that? Let that be somewhat comforting. Your grief is not that different. It's not that unique. To me, this is what grief feels like, particularly at the beginning. And we've heard that supposed to be comforting statement that time heals all wounds. It does not. It does not. If it did, those people on Facebook who have been at it 10 years or 15 years or 25 years, who are bitter and angry and love to tell you it will never get better, and they are crossing off the days until they are reunited with their loved one, if time heals all wounds, those people wouldn't be where they are. Would you agree with that? Time doesn't heal all wounds. It's what we do with our time that determines whether or not we will heal. In the beginning, and depending upon the conscious healing work you're doing, the beginning could be 3 months, or 3 years, or 13 years, or 30 years. But in the beginning, it's as if there is a volcano erupting inside of us over and over and over and over again. If that rings true for you, you're normal. You are absolutely normal. Grief also feels like a tsunami, a wave that keeps coming and coming and coming. No rhyme, no reason. Destroys everything in its path. This is the aftermath of grief. Would you agree? Grief destroys practically everything in its way. And I'm going to suggest to you, it is supposed to. It's supposed to. Grief is supposed to crack us open so that we can become the people we came to this planet to become. Grief cracks us open. It is supposed to. Who's heard of the 5 stages of grief? Okay? Blessedly, thank God, you don't hear about them as much as you used to. People of a certain age, that's all we heard. That there were these 5 very predictable, orderly stages of grief. I remember people saying, it sounds like you may be in the anger stage. How long are you going to stay in the anger stage until you're able to move into whatever the next stage is? To me, this is a more accurate picture of grief. It is messy. It is winding. It is unpredictable. It is all over the frickin' place. Yes? Yes. This is what grief looks like. And again, it's supposed to. So there is what I call an old way to do grief. How do I know this? Because I did it the old way after our daughter Erin died. It's funny because I do